What's up guys, SpartanCat, and in today's BattleCats video, I've compiled 10 different cats that I consider generalists, and these cats can be used in just about any situation or lineup due to their versatile, powerful nature. I will separate them in 4 different tiers: intangible, support, attacker, and meat shield. And with these units being put in one of these 4 tiers, it doesn't mean that they can't do any of the other roles, but this is where I would classify them as an attacker, defender, support, or if they have a special ability, that would go in intangible. Before I get onto the list, if you guys enjoyed this video, learn anything, or just feel generous today, please make sure to leave a like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss an upload. It really does help our channel grow. And additionally, if you have any thoughts, comments, anything, leave them down below in the comment section. Getting into the first ranking, we have Ramen Cat, and he's going to go into meat shield. Even though he is a very powerful meat shield, you could definitely make a case for him as a support or an attacker due to his spammable nature and the fact that when you stack him, he has a ton of DPS. He's also one of the most powerful DPS driven meat shields in the game. He deals a ton of damage for the fact that he's 300 cents and the fact that he's a meat shield as well. A very good one, and that is. Pair him with research combos or put him in an anti-angel loadout and he becomes an absolute powerhouse. But I'm going to put him in meat shield just due to the fact that that is his number one usage, especially with aforementioned research combos. But all in all, he could hold his weight with defense, obviously. He deals a lot of damage and in droves. So if you're an enemy, watch out. Next is Courier Cat, and I'm going to put him in an attacker, but he could definitely be a support as well. And the reason I put Courier at attacker is because similarly to Ramen Cat, he deals a ton of damage, but he's also very spammable. He's cheap, he has long range, and honestly, he's like a nuker. When you put a ton of them together, it's almost like having a crazed Bahamut Cat in the backline that won't miss 80% of its attacks. I mean, it's absolutely insane. Never mind if you're using against colossal enemies or red enemies, it just goes through the roof. But I'm going to put him in attacker just because of the amount of DPS he has. And you're going to see a lot of units on this list are going to be weaving between support, attacker, and meat shield because they really could be all 3 in any situation. And that's what makes these units good generalists that you could put in just about any lineup because they're versatile. And I guarantee you, if you put all 10 of these units in a lineup, you'd probably beat 90% of the stages, with the exception of some metal stages. But I'm going to put Courier at attacker just because his damage is through the roof. Moving on, we have Euron. And she's going to go in support because she has a lot of range. She's able to knock enemies back and keep your units safe. But she also deals a good amount of damage and has a good amount of DPS. So the fact that she's very well-rounded and has the high range, high health, all of those attributes in addition to the good DPS makes her a very balanced, good, powerful, long-range support. And you could argue that she's on the offensive because she pushes enemies back, moves over, attacks a bunch of them, can kill them, pushes the way over. But I would argue that she's a support because she's usually not the main threat, similarly to a Ramen Cat or whatever it might be. But all in all, a very great support unit, and she can be used throughout a lot of the game, and especially with Urz and Fenrir, you basically have 2. It's like using Bahamut and Yukimura. The more the merrier. Moving on, we have Mohawk, and obviously he's a meat shield. And I'm going to put him on this list just because of how available he is to literally every single BattleCats player, because he's the first unit you get. Don't forget that. You know, you'll never make it in the game without him. And he's cheap, he's basic, he doesn't do a whole lot, but he's just a good meat shield, and he doesn't really lose a ton of relevance until you get crazy units and stuff. But even throughout that, when you need extra meat shields, he's usually one of the first people you'll bring in because he's cheap and he does the job. So all in all, solid meat shield, and just about anybody could use him in any lineup because of how basic his role is. In the last version of this I made back in December, I had a bunch of versions of Tank Cat in there, and you know what? Mohawk isn't too bad either. So let's throw him in here in the meat shield. And our next ranking is going to be Cyberpunk, who will also be a support with Euron due to the fact that it doesn't have a ton of damage or anything, but it could absolutely stifle enemy offenses because it sits all the way back at your base. and with talents and everything, it's able to kill some peons, but definitely most importantly, long, slow uptime. When you stack these cyberpunks at your base, and if the enemies can't move forward, cyberpunk wins. Your team wins. There's no way for them to move up. If all of them are slowed and you have a whole powerful line of attackers, they're really going to have a hard time moving up. Even if it's a very powerful boss, if it's perma-slowed and you have knockbacks or freezes on it, it's immobilized. It can't do a whole lot. So definitely support. This is probably the easiest ranking so far other than Mohawk Cat, just because Cyberpunk isn't known for offense. Definitely isn't a meat shield. I don't recommend you using him as a meat shield because he will not protect your units for very long. And although you could make a case for him being an intangible due to his special ability, I think support is the best place to put him. Moving on to Cameraman, and I'm going to put him at support. I kind of want to put him at the other two tiers, and you know, as I said before, it's kind of a toss-up for a few of these units because Cameraman could definitely do a ton of damage, especially against red enemies, but he could also be a meat shield because he's strong against floating and stuff. I'm going to put him at support though, because similarly to the unit you're Run Wolf in that tier, he's not usually the main offensive threat or anything, and if he's a meat shield, then he could still be a pretty expensive option, so I wouldn't always recommend you to use him as a meat shield. But as a support, you could always count on him for having high droves of DPS. When you have droves of him, you can get a ton of damage and DPS out of him when you have stacks, but one or two by itself won't always do the job. So definitely a spammable support type attacker, which could also be used as a meat shield in some contexts. So all in all, a very versatile unit who is pretty much useful across the board throughout the entire game. The more levels you put on him, the better he's going to be, and the fact that you can get him super easily in the rare capsules makes it easy to upgrade him throughout the game. So I would recommend you putting him in lineups that might not even be fighting a floating enemy just because of how good of a generalist he could be. Especially if you put research combos on or whatever. If you have your rich cat with you, then hopefully the money won't be as big of a problem. Moving on from Cameraman is Awakened Bahamut. This could go straight in attacker, doesn't need much introduction. Baja Blast is broken. I love that we have a drink nickname for Bahamut Cat, and honestly I'm so happy that he got these talents because now he's great again. Not that he was ever bad, but now he's back on top of the meta, and that's what I like to see. Pono's putting the work into the right units that need to be upgraded. And I'm still waiting for Pono's to upgrade Mechabun and Filibuster, which will probably never happen in the near future, but the fact that we have Baja Blast before GTA 6 is insane. Bahamut could be used in just about any lineup that requires you to get rid of an enemy or two, or 10 or 20. He's just insane, especially against bosses. I mean, I wouldn't always recommend him against peons, but in low enemy spawn stages, or boss heavy stages, or heavy money drop stages, I would recommend you to bring him because you'll get a ton of value and a ton of bang for your buck. Moving on from Bahamut, we have Aphrodite, and she's a gun support, long range, can do a ton of damage to aliens, but in terms of just being a generalist, it's still a very, very viable long range sniper support option. She deals thousands and thousands of DPS from 600 range away, which is further than a ton of units. I mean, 600 standing range is a lot, never mind her pierce, but even outside of her niche, she's quite powerful. She could survive decently well. You know, I wish she had a couple more knockbacks, but all in all, just a great unit. And even if you're outside of Empire of Cats into the future, Cats of the Cosmos could still be used well in a middle game. Just fall off a little bit when you see more features like Surge and stuff like that, but all in all, very good for a vast amount of the game. Moving on from Aphrodite, we have Professor Catjobs. He's going to be a support. Actually, no, he's going to be an intangible because his weaken is his entire skill. He doesn't necessarily have the strongest stats or anything. I mean, he definitely doesn't. He's the slowest in the game. He has some of the lowest health in the game. He has some of the lowest attack in the game, but he is able to perma weaken enemies down to 1% of their health. You could pretty much, it's like a 90+% uptime or something, and for that entirety of duration, as long as they're hit by a surge, that is, you know, the surge could be a little inconsistent, but if you're able to get him in the right spot and with a little bit of RNG, you can completely paralyze the other side. because they will be down to 1% of their base damage. If they deal 100,000 damage per attack, they're now down to 1,000 damage per attack. It's insane, and he is becoming a lot less slept on. People have been incorporating him in lineups for a while, but I still can't stress enough how much upside there is to him. However, if you're not careful, he can die. It needs a super long recharge, so be careful. His survivability is pretty bad, but if you use him in the right situations, it will pay dividends. And last but not least, we have Casagizo. And once again, he could be a support, an attacker, probably not a meat shield. I'll put him on an attacker just because his job is to absolutely rip apart two traits, Black and Angel. He just deals a ton of damage to both of them. But even in the context of being a generalist, he has more range than some other units, like Brahmin, who could be considered an attacker as well. But the fact that he is just spammable, broken DPS screams attacker to me, but definitely a support as well. Just have to pick between one or the other. But that is my list. These are 10 units that you should definitely consider putting in your lineup in 2025, or honestly, whatever year you're watching this, because I don't see how any of these 10 units are going to become bad anywhere in my lifetime. But if you guys enjoyed the video, please make sure to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss an upload. Also, make sure to leave all your thoughts down below in the comment section. Just remember to keep discussions civil, and I hope you enjoyed. Sparring Cat signing off, and I will see you in my next video. Peace.